There is a sixth dimension beyond that which is known to man. A multiverse as vast as eternity, as timeless as the Infinity Gems. It is the middle ground between the big two and the indie publishers, between sci-fi and mysticism, and it lies between the pages of the reader's imagination. At the summit of entertainment, the dimension of comics, where a humble service is held. We call this service the Gospel of Comics.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host, The Church of Failure, and with me as always is my trusty co-host, yet dying co-host, Ayrton McCartney. How you doing today, buddy?
I think you covered it with the dying part.
I've told you repeatedly that is not allowed. So hopefully
it's in my contract.
Hopefully you'll get past that. I don't have time for you to be dying. That was
Yeah, luckily I got somebody to cover me tomorrow since I had to cover somebody on Wednesday. So I'll get to sleep some before we do stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna have Gilbert Deltrez on. We're actually gonna have him on to do a more of a video segment than audio, so or than stream. But I'm thinking we might make that stream available for patrons. Just do a private show and then chop it down later.
Yeah.
So
I can dig it.
Well, we'll see, and then we'll put it up as videos as it goes on. I'm trying to find my my Watchmen. I'm sure it's here somewhere. Yeah, but I mean, I know I've got
the Alan Moore curse.
No shit. All right. Let's see, Watchmen.
He found us.
Yep.
Novel bro, send us those crucifixes and holy water.
Wave the crucifixes around. So, Watchmen's been a pretty hot topic as of late, just on its face because of, the new show coming out. As most people are aware. Did you ever see the movie, Ayrton? I don't know that we talked about that.
I did not.
You didn't see the movie?
I was going to try and watch it before the show. No, I was going to try and watch it before the show, but I didn't have time.
Well, it helps that, in 12 issues it takes 18 months to read, so.
Right? It felt like I was reading for 18 months.
This is obviously one of the longer comics in the catalog that well, it's not really longer that we've read. It's so wordy and it's more to chew through than anything else. But at no point was I ever like, oh man, I just wish this was over.
Oh yeah, it was great. I was captivated the whole time. It was just like, geez.
Yeah, you feel like you read 2 issues and you realize you've read a half of one.
Yeah.
So, as the thumbnail described there, we're not going to be talking much necessarily about the actual storyline, because I feel like if you've seen the Watchmen movie, they did a pretty good job actually breaking down some of the story. I want to talk about some of the things that are going to be that were different. And talk about some of the things that were included in the book that weren't really, that may have been mentioned, but weren't, like, addressed in full in the movie. That makes sense. So, this will be kind of a learning experience for you, I guess. You'll know what to expect from the movie and what not to. But,
yeah.
Bear Boy saying, dude, I choose you.
I get a chance for...
Throws holy Pokeball. I think I should sue Game Freak if they make a church Pokemon. Maybe in copyright infringement.
I wonder what a church Pokemon would look like. Any artist listening right now, draw that up.
I like to think that it would look like me and I'd have a basis for my lawsuit, but we all know how that goes. Let's see here.
Well, everybody draw church as a Pokemon.
I think that's pretty much what people draw me as anyway. All my avatars.
that's fair.
Alright, so...
Well, you're more
Vertigo.
Optimus Prime-y, at least in the one I can see.
Yeah. Vertigo, here we go. What the hell? I know I've got it. I've read it. I have Watchmen. Is it under The Watchmen? Is it one of those weird
Uh-oh.
things? I hate everything. Not like I couldn't go just find it again, but it really, really throws the show off when I do stuff like this, doesn't it? I'm sorry.
We're so prepared, folks.
Absolutely. Watchmen. It'll be in there somewhere. Give me that Lovecraftian shit. Oh, holy Pokeball of Antioch would be blue and red and gold all over it. Alright, here we go. I found it. It's under...
and speaking of Lovecraftian, really monster,
Yeah.
octopus, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Really, Alan Moore.
I will say that that's probably the most dynamic difference of the movie and the story. At the end of the movie, it wasn't a squid monster. It was a series of explosions designed to look like Dr. Manhattan's power. But I just want to say that, again, give me a shout out in the chat. Have you guys seen the Watchmen movie? Novel Bro. Looks like you're the only one active in chat besides Ayrton right now. I know his answer, but tell me you've at least seen the Watchmen movie. Dead air.
I want you to type it out in Scottish.
Be nice. So, the book, like I said, point for point, I feel like the movie is probably one of the best adaptations of a comic book story to a movie. All the major points were hit on high. The storyline goes through almost page for page like the movie. Even some of the scenes are directly lifted from the book, like the scene layouts and settings and whatnot. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's honestly one of the best superhero movies ever made, in my opinion, or comic book movies, I should say. Because after you get to know these characters, it's kind of hard to call any of them superheroes. I mean, Dan's a coward. Owlman, he's a coward.
Yeah.
Sally Jupiter, or Lori Jupiter is a fucking basket case. Dr. Manhattan is just completely disassociated. Yes, the movie is the only way I got into it. Snyder pulled me in like the wee slut by Amsterdam. What? I don't even want to know what that means, but as long as you've seen it. But, no, the characters themselves are not heroic. I mean, for fuck's sake, Rorschach is a goddamn sociopath. So,
Yeah.
There's nothing heroic about any of these characters. Go ahead.
And what the hell was she smoking through the whole book? Was that a meth pipe?
No. Those were evolved
crack
cigarettes. Those were cigarettes with Dr. Manhattan.
I must have missed the explanation to that, because it looks just like a crack pipe.
Yeah, I want to know how you know what crack pipes look like, though. I mean, I guess, you work in a tobacco shop, you have to know what not to stock.
Yeah.
Go to a grocery store, and that's those things that they put the glass roses in.
Yep.
Technically, wouldn't that just be a meth pipe?
Do you have glass roses?
No.
No, you smoke it the same.
Really?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Huh.
Yeah.
Many drugs as I've done. Never that one. So.
And they even have meth/crack pipes that are like fancy and have like a water bubbler attachment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, now starting off from the beginning, you go through and you find out that the comedian died. The comedian is one of the characters that doesn't really get a lot of exposition in the beginning of the story, but you find out a lot about him through flashbacks and whatnot. But the story starts off with him being killed.
He's also kind of a rapey sociopath.
Oh yeah, yeah, very very pro Vietnam War just because he gets to go kill people. Knocks up like again, scene for scene from the movie. The whole speech from the scene where he's in Vietnam and the pregnant woman comes up to him and she cuts his face with glass and he puts a bullet in her. Matt Christie is late but not gay. I can't confirm he is not gay. But
all right, as long as you say so, Matt.
We'll take your word for it this time. But, you know, the story opens up simple enough. Two detectives investigating the comedian's death. Rorschach breaks in shortly thereafter, discovers that Edward Blake was the comedian. And that starts this whole conspiracy theory. But it kicks off the entire series with a conspiracy theory that Rorschach is like, okay, somebody's trying to kill masked superheroes and vigilantes. Well,
now, did you read all of Rorschach's dialogue in an Alex Jones voice? Because I definitely did.
No, I actually read it in the actor that played him. Again, everything about the movie, like, I can't say enough good things about the Watchmen movie in comparison to this book. But I'm going to have to try and find Strong Enough for a Man but Made for a Woman. Jesus Christ. Already off the rails. 1 second. But,
well, of course.
But no. Rorschach's got a conspiracy theory that he believes that somebody's gunning for mass killers. And as we read through the story, we find out that, or for mass heroes and killing them. But we read through the story and we find out that that's less and less far-fetched than you think. And then there's the Shyamalan twist in the end. But while you're going through the story, you know, he encounters, and it basically used as an introduction, Rorschach telling all of the surviving superheroes that are still free that, you know, they might need to watch their backs or whatever. So that gives you kind of all the exposition you need to know about the playing characters in this book.
Yeah, I like how slowly kind of throughout the story, Rorschach's paranoia kind of starts to sink into Owlman a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, as more things happen, he starts to get a little paranoid too. I thought that was a cool kind of play, like on his character, how he kind of misses the action a little bit, even though he is a bit of a coward.
Well, I think it's that, and it's a little bit of him being breaking the conditioning, Trapper. The answer to 1984, 1776. But no, I feel
We're
like
breaking the conditioning.
You know, I feel like there's just little parts and pieces of this story in its written form that are just completely and utterly overlooked in every sense of the word, especially in the, you know, translation to screen. So I really wanted to cover those more than anything because, like I said, I feel like the story's out there in enough possible ways. So I wanted to talk about the excerpts and the auxiliary material that's included in the back of the book. Now, obviously, some of this may be pulled from true sources. I haven't had a chance to figure that out yet. But some of it is definitely not. Like the book that Hollis Mason supposedly wrote under the hood. Um,
Yeah,
kind of his, I don't know, his
autobiography,
his
I guess.
autobiography, his tell-all like novel or whatever. It
Yeah.
tells about him being a cop growing up, and he opens up with this almost heartbreaking story about the guy that his dad used to work for in an auto body shop, finding out that he was cheated on, and then putting an exhaust pipe, running a hose to it inside of the car, and then killing himself. Finding out while he's listening to opera music and wearing fake breast, everybody just busting out laughing at him. It's terrible, but you can kind of see where the joke is, and it lends a sense of heart to the writing. This isn't just a funny book. Like I believe, and I'm not completely sure, but I believe that Alan Moore actually wrote all of this auxiliary material specifically for this as well.
Oh, okay.
So
I did kind of just skim over those bits a little bit.
it gives so much heart and soul to the story, though, when you actually go back and read that stuff. I skimmed over it the first time I read the book. So I'm like, why is this important? It's not. There's nobody punching anybody. But in reading it this time, I paid special attention to all of this stuff, and I've gone back and reread it before as well. This is like my fifth or sixth time through Watchmen. Um, but when you go back and you look at this, there's just so much heart in this part of the story. Going through and he explains why he starts telling the story about his dad's boss or whatever is that he was told by a failed writer that that's how you capture an audience. You start off with everything that's the most heartbreaking thing you can think of, and that was for him that moment of the film made an Under the Hood featurette too, by the way. Was it in the bonus materials, like on the never skim Mason heresy? Was it in the bonus materials on like the DVD or something novel, bro? Because they mentioned it in the movie, but they never like showed you pages or gave you excerpts from it. So I don't know if they did a bonus materials thing where they added that, then that also gives a much better like ring or touch to the movie that I've never known about. I do own it, I think. Pretty sure I own Watchmen. Maybe
I'm sure you probably do.
it would make sense, but at the same time, like I haven't watched a DVD, and I do own it. It's right there. Okay, it's out of place, but I do own it. Okay, bonus material. Yeah. So you get the story of this guy and his auto body shop and his folly and whatever. And they explain that he took the idea from basically a failed novelist that worked stocking groceries, and she told him, lead with something sad, and everybody will be along hook, line, and sinker. And that's kind of a parallel to leading with the murder of Edward Blake. Now,
Yeah.
in the movie, um, the opening scene is a comedian like settling down and the fight happening, and that's all juxtaposed and it's color coordinated. Like the main scenes in the beginning of the book, you have the yellow lit scenes, is what I call them. Um, all of the highlight and shadowing is almost in like a yellow hue, and then the red scenes. The red scenes are flashbacks of the fight that actually occurred, even though you really have no idea who did it. But you get Blake being thrown out of a window, and it's really unclear in the book whether or not it's speculation and these guys imagining what happened, or if it's actually what happened. But the blood dripping out of Blake's face gets on his comedian pin that he even wears on his robe, which is kind of funny. But
I mean, if you were a superhero, wouldn't you wear a button of your symbol on your robe.
Into the Spider-Verse said superheroes shouldn't wear their own merch, so I kind of take that advice to heart.
That's fair.
So the two detectives pass by a diner that becomes kind of a pivotal point in the story, the Gunga Diner, of all places. Um, and they're talking about Rorschach as they walk past, and that's when we get our first look at Rorschach out of costume as the end is near, or the end is nigh, sign bearing crazy dude with flaming
Yeah.
red hair. Um, and this kind of goes
Which
to the.
don't we all kind of aspire to be that guy?
I do. That's definitely the end goal of this. Is I want to end up on the block, in a trench coat, holding a sign saying the end is near.
Oh yeah.
But what really impressed me
I might
is,
just do it for fun.
yeah, true to the era, Rorschach carries around a grappling hook gun. But
Which I would so love one of those.
wouldn't you? I mean, you'd have to be in pretty good shape to use it, I think. But
Yeah, but it'd still be fun. Hey, Matt Christie, you can build some crazy computer shit. Can you build one of those?
a grappling hook gun that can support the weight. Um,
Yeah.
Anyway, you juxtapose to a scene of Hollis Mason and Dan Dryberg having a conversation about being old school and, you know, going, talking about their old superhero, you know, tirades or whatever. And Dryberg leaves to go home and is, you know, confronted by Rorschach having broken into his house and eating beans out of the can. So it's pretty much scene for scene, beat for beat for the movie. They explain that the comedian's dead. They go down to his headquarters, and you find out that Dryberg is the former night owl who has retired under the Keene Act. They go down to explain that all the superheroes basically quit except for Rorschach, and then you end up on a scene of Dan sitting dejected by his old armor, which is a pretty great scene, I gotta say.
Oh yeah.
Just
And
rework a underwater
I,
harpoon. That's his answer.
yeah, I could see that working. But I have decided if I ever have to break into a friend's house to give them bad news, I'm totally gonna just eat some of their food while I wait for them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Hope you don't mind. Help myself to some and it's got to be weird shit. Like you got to be eating like the dried ramen, like just eating
Yeah,
it
just
out of the
crunching
bag.
on it,
Right.
or like frozen peas.
Yeah.
Just like taking little bits at a time, like popcorn.
Right. That or like frozen French fries or something.
Because everybody has a bag of frozen peas in their fridge that's been in there for like 6 months that
Yeah,
eventually you'll use.
for black eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you could go the
Or
opposite
sore
route.
testicles.
You go the opposite route. You break in. I don't know that I want to eat testicle peas. You can go the opposite route. You just break in and you cook up all their steak and eggs.
Yeah, that's a bit of a dick move though. The other ones are just kind of like random and eccentric.
Yeah, but
You know.
yeah, you get the scene of. I don't know why I'm going through this. I said we weren't going to do this. We were going to look at some of the auxiliary material, but I'm just going through the story like we usually do. But
Old habits die hard, I guess.
they do. You get the scene with Vike, and then you cut over to the same kind of encounter with Adrian Vike, who used to be Ozymandias, one of the former heroes that went rich and became like an overnight millionaire. Then, then Rorschach breaks into a military facility to confront Dr. Manhattan and Silk Spectre, aka how do you say her last name? A very Polish last
I
name.
have no idea.
Jaspecic or whatever.
I think it's,
Jaspecic.
I'm gonna have to pull it back up and look at it.
It's
Something like that, I think.
Juspeczyk. It's almost as bad as Danilinski. But he warns him that
Yeah, jump sick.
yeah, he warns him the comedian died and somebody might be gunning for Mask, and he's basically you know, un, informally escorted out by Doctor Manhattan, teleporting him outside of the facility. And
Which that's got to be a weird experience, right?
well, they actually go into that in the next issue, but
Yeah.
the story ends once Silk Spectre calls up Dan Dryberg, aka Night Owl, to go out to dinner and talk about everything. Uh, you could be the White Lucius Fox, absolutely. You know what? You're hired. We're gonna be superheroes now, Ayrton. We're gonna go fight crime.
Hell yeah.
Steak and eggs burglary is a
Beat up
Chad
some-
move, though. Just broke in to make sure your steak and eggs weren't wasted by half, man.
that's a good point. The steak and egg bandits.
I cucked you out of your breakfast. Do something about it. Actually, you cucked me out of breakfast and dinner. Fuck yeah, I did. uh, that's going to be what we do as superheroes. Make sure your steak is good and you have the means to prepare it correctly. I'm going to break into your house, cook your steaks,
And,
and as I'm eating them, I'm going to chastise you.
Why'd you buy this cut? This is shit. Look at all this hardened fat on there. What's wrong with you?
Not all
Just
heroes
slap 'em.
Not all heroes wear capes, Aaron. But anyway, it's it's a great first chapter, and it kind of sets the tone for the way the rest of the book's going to go. Now, one thing that I do notice is there's all kind of little tidbits that you start to see going through the story. Um, the spray paint on the walls, all of it kind of is important. Any newspaper you see, you should try and read the headline at least of. Like the one in this
Yeah.
particular image with Adrian Vike, aka Ozymandias. Doomsday Clock stands at 5 to 12. I mean, it's stuff that's not expressly said in the story, but it's all important. And this is something that, and I'm going to diatribe off, so we can probably safely assume that we're going to make it through about half this story tonight and might have to finish it up tomorrow night on the show.
Fair
But,
enough.
I'm going to go off for a second here. This is the work of a great artist and a great writer working together. To be able to put clues like that in and essentially tell a story in the art alongside the story that's being told in the words. Because the idea of nuclear holocaust and another world war is on the tip of the tongue of the story. And it's a very important part of it because overall, in the end, for everyone that's seen the movie, because let's just be real here. Anybody that wants to read the story or watch this movie has seen it, so I don't really feel bad about spoilers. The end of the book is all about, preventing nuclear holocaust. I mean, you picked that up, right?
Yeah, kind of like a what will you do for the greater good sort of
Right.
philosophical
If
question.
yeah, if it means killing 15 million people to save the world, do you do it? And it shows the varying degrees of ability to handle that question. Um, so, spoiler alert, we're going to kind of cover the ending real quick here. Not in full, but the story gets 2 minutes to midnight before spooky. Movie gets 2 minutes before midnight. IRL, we actually at 3 minutes to midnight. Really? Huh. But Ozymandias, being the smartest man in the world, um, really has no problem sacrificing. Like they're all like human beings are just numbers to him. He and John are shown to be, polar extremes of the other throughout the book. It's mentioned in one portion, I think issue 4 or 5, that they met for the first time and were the only two that found the other interesting. Like nobody else was worth
Oh
talking to
yeah,
at a group gathering of masked adventurers. And
yeah.
Ozymandias
I,
was
I
new,
like.
so yeah.
Sorry, quick little aside. I like how they always referred to themselves as masked adventurers, not like superheroes or
Well, the term is
stuff like
brought
that.
up. The term is brought up a couple of times, mainly in Hollis Mason's
Yeah,
book, but um, and it's kind of an alternate history story as well because this story is supposed to be taking place on Earth in the 80s, except Nixon's been president for God knows how long. Um, a constitutional amendment has allowed him to continue to run for president, and he stayed president ever since basically his first election. Um, Russia is afraid of the U.S. because of Dr. Manhattan. Vietnam was won by the comedian and Dr. Manhattan. Um, but it's just a very grim and gritty world. The thing that interests me the most is what the news seller was talking about comic books, and there was even a God, I can't remember what issue it was in, but one of the auxiliary materials that I wanted to talk about, um, it talks about how the the black freighter, which from
yeah.
all I
The
can
pirate ship.
yeah, from all accounts that I can find, never existed because pirate comics really never took off. But in this universe, they did. Superhero comics fell out of fashion because real life superheroes existed.
Yeah.
And I found that really
So it's kind
interesting.
of like like a reversal of things. Like we sell pirates today, so
Yeah, well, if you can call
could you
those
imagine that
pirates.
a comic book about Somali pirates? That'd be hilarious.
I mean, get on it. Put it on Indiegogo.
That's the first Gospel of Comics Indiegogo story about Somali pirates.
That's right. Encountering the ghost of Blackbeard.
Oh yeah, I can dig it. All right, novel bro, let's start working on this.
Rorschach the killer's going after Mask and attack on one of them, attack on all of it. Yeah, and he's the one character like that's what I was kind of talking about in the ending. I got a little sidetracked, but the smartest man in the world, Dryberg, has no problem sacrificing a statistic of numbers to save the world. And then I feel like the next rung on that ladder is John, aka Dr. Manhattan, who has lost his humanity to the point where it's not even a question of statistics for him, but logical fallacy. And then you've got Night Owl Dan Dryberg, who knows that it's wrong morally, but understands that, now that the cards are in play to reveal the fact that this was all a ploy by Ozymandias, would basically make those deaths worthless. So, and then you have, Silk Spectre, who, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but
Yes, you do.
I don't. I really don't. But, as in the heat of the moment, it's kind of hard to tell where she stands on everything, but she holds her tongue too. So I put her and Dan on the same level. But then you have the exact opposite end of the spectrum, Rorschach, who, even in the face of Armageddon, said never compromise, which is a mirror to something he says in the beginning of the book. So I thought that was kind of interesting how the morality just kind of broke down for everyone. Oh God, Speedboat Meat Grinder, Somalia, out now on Indiegogo. It's gone. Shit. That's about the way of it, yeah. Well, that'd be the way of it if it was on Kickstarter.
Fair.
But anyway, that pretty much takes us into issue 2. Now, issue 2, kind of more. That is one thing I can say about this. This is a very human story. The story is not about heroes. It's not about villains. It's not about, good guys versus bad guys or right versus wrong. It's about the human element. And it starts out with the comedian's funeral. Hold on. Get this pulled up here. It starts out with the comedian's funeral, and instead of going to the comedian's funeral, Silk Spectre goes to visit her mother, the original Silk Spectre, who's holed away at a retirement home. Again, very reminiscent of the original story, of the, not the original story, very reminiscent of the movie, scene for scene almost in certain parts, even the Tijuana Bible, which I think we should do a show on Tijuana Bibles. Yeah, they mentioned the Tijuana Bible.
Yeah, I know that. But is her mom as big of a bitch in the movie?
Yes. Even worse, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's almost point for point, man. You've really got to see this movie. Maybe watch it before tomorrow's show.
Apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, if you have time, do it.
I'll probably be able to.
Do it sometime in the morning before we start recording. We're gonna have Gilbert at like 7, so.
Okay. Cool.
So we'll figure all that out. But let's see here. Go ahead and get into this. So the second issue, like I said, starts out at the funeral and with Silk Spectre visiting her mother, the original Silk Spectre. In this, there's a lot of flashbacks to the founding of the Minutemen, which were the original superhero team with the original Night Owl, character named Hooded Justice, Dollar Bill, Captain Metropolis, Mothman, Silk Spectre, and the comedian. Now, during this meeting, which again also took place in the movie, the comedian tried to sexually assault Silk Spectre after he beat her ass, and then Hooded Justice came up and beat the piss out of him. And that was really a weird scene for the movie. Like, I didn't know that was in the original book, almost scene for scene. Like, I thought it might be a subplot or something like that. But
I'm pretty sure after I read that, I texted you and said I thought we were done with the rape in the Alan Moore books.
No, we're done with the fish rape. So you got that going for you. But basically, this issue is just kind of a breakdown on everyone who's present and invested in the story's interactions with the comedian, how they see him, Ozymandias met him at a meeting of the Watchmen, which was basically take 2 of the Minutemen. Um, and he basically showed up and told them how stupid it was for mass to gang together like this. Like, who's it for? You begin to see Silk Spectre, like the one we see in the beginning, all of that. But again, after you get through all of that, like this entire issue takes place around the funeral, and they cut through flashbacks to Vietnam. They cut through the flashbacks of right before the Keene Act was enacted, and the Owlman and or the Night Owl, Owlman, the DC Batman shit. Night Owl and Comedian were dispersing some other criminals, and then you have a mystery guest at the funeral who turns out to be Moloch. And when Moloch gets home, he goes to his refrigerator and opens the door, and well, Rorschach jumps out and starts beating the piss out of him.
Which, I mean, wouldn't you, if you were gonna do that, get the jump on somebody? I'd hide in their fridge.
I mean, that is. I don't remember that being in the movie that he jumped out of the refrigerator. I remember the part of him leaving the note in the refrigerator, but which comes later in the movie or later in the
But
story.
wouldn't you want to? But wouldn't you want to jump out of the refrigerator?
I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly.
That's when you find out that Edward Blake was coming to Moloch talking about a conspiracy. Rorschach leaves and goes to pay his respects. Kind of rehashes the idea that someone killed him. And I do want to take this time to point out something really interesting. Every issue ends on a quote or a lyric or something like that. And a clock, which, as Novel Bro pointed out, eventually counts down to 2 minutes to midnight. But I kind of really like that.
Yeah, that was a real nice touch because it starts with what's a Bob Dylan quote, right?
Right.
In the first issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was a nice touch too. I really enjoyed that little ending bit each time. I forget what most of the quotes are at this point, but I did really like that. Does that play any role in the movie at all? Like, do they have some sort of tie-in to like each of these quotes or something?
Maybe the soundtrack does. I don't know exactly. I've not done that research. That would be kind of interesting to look into. I'm sure a top 10 website
That would
has.
be interesting.
But the second issue ends on Elvis Costello. So, but you also have a second.
It does have something to do with the soundtrack.
You also have
I'll see if I can catch any of that when I watch it tomorrow.
Well, you also have a second excerpt from Under the Hood at the end of the second issue that goes deeper into the comedian's work with the government. The fact that he was never charged for sexually assaulting Silk Spectre or any of that shit for the group's image, and what eventually took the original heroes out of the game. So, Bob Dylan gets honored. Yeah. Let's see here. Oh my god.
Yeah, Bob Dylan. He's not a great singer and not the best like musician, but damn, could he write some amazing lyrics.
All right. So the third issue is where we're introduced to the Black Freighter, and I've heard it said in this very chat that without the Black Freighter, the ending of the book doesn't work. So I'd actually like to hear your thoughts on that. And while I hear your thoughts on that, I'm going to mute and go find a tissue because I really need to blow my nose, and it's really starting to bother me.
Yeah, well, so reading it through kind of sporadically, like I always had to kind of like, I had to start keeping a mental note of what that was because I actually forgot in like the day or so in between a couple of the issues this week. I was like, oh yeah, okay. Um, but yeah, going through it, there was just, you start to kind of pick up on some cool parallels between uh, the main character trying to save his town and a little bit of what's going on. It's kind of like foreshadowing what's going to happen with however you say that, the guy's name, the rich guy's name, Viet,
Vite.
whatever, Vite.
Adrian Vite.
Okay,
Ozymandias.
Ozymandias. But I like how it was kind of like a foreshadowing parallel, kind of trailing uh, in front of the main story a little bit.
Well, one of the things that it talks about, not in this issue, but I think maybe the next one, is in order to get off the island he's stranded on, he actually uses the corpses of the other people um, that were killed on that boat that
Yeah,
that capsized or whatever by the black freighter. Oh, what's going on, Daniel? Good to have you here. No worries, buddy. We like
yeah, and
having
that's
you.
kind of
We don't care if you're late. Ayrton, I didn't win the lottery. Shit, he didn't win the lottery.
imagine my shock.
Next time, buddy. Next time. But no,
But yeah, I thought
the
there was
parallels
some
with the
cool
Black Freighter,
parallels of
like
kind of the stuff that was
he escapes the island on the backs of dead men, which I mean is
yeah,
essentially kind of like a parallel to everything that's happened thus far, and by the end of the
right.
movie, or by the end of the book, that so many people had to die in the squid attack or whatever for the nation to come together and call a ceasefire, so to speak. You're doing it on the
And which
backs of dead men.
yeah, and which realistically, if we did have an alien attack, do you really think the countries of the world would come together?
I like to think that they might.
I feel like China would just blame the United States like it's our fault because we landed on the moon that attracted aliens or some shit. You know what I mean?
Well, but it's not China that we're worried about here. It's the Russians.
True. Well, I meant like today in today's age, it's China,
True. You could
and still a little bit of the Russians.
you could juxtapose Russia and China and rewrite this book with China instead of Russia, and it would make just as much sense.
Yeah, China
Pretty
is
interesting.
asshole.
Taiwan #1, Hong Kong #1, China #4. But let's see here. No, this is where you start kind of getting the story of the Black Freighter, and instead of being, you know, subjugated to the back of the book, you get passages on old scroll-like tapestry. China is asshole. That's correct. On old like tapestry panels in the middle of just regular dialogue. So you've got a
which
kid.
Is a little weird to get used to at first.
It is, but by the time the second issue comes around, you see that they're almost correlating ideologies
Yeah,
in, a comic book within a comic book, and the what's taking place on the page of the comic book you're reading. It's kind of weird, a little bit meta, but I like it. So
only
you got
only a master wizard like Alan Moore could pull that off.
right. So you get a scene of this kid. Well, I say kid, must be an adult. Sitting there smoking a cigarette, reading a comic book right beside a news guy who's much older, And, the news guy's talking to the kid, but the kid's not paying him any attention. And in fact, a couple of times he's just like, I'm reading here. But,
I mean, wouldn't you do the same thing?
Probably. But eventually you get Rorschach coming up to get his copy of the New Frontiersman that he asks, he makes a joke. And this is something that doesn't happen in the movie. You don't get near as much detail on this guy. So, kind of why I wanted to talk a little bit more about him. But you see him a couple of times, I'm pretty sure. But, at a certain point it starts raining, and the kid's like, hey, let me hold your hat. I'm getting rained on. And he's like, no, I don't know. And by the end of the story, Rorschach's come up to pick up his book. And he's like, so, how's the end of the world coming? And he's like, it'll happen today. I've seen signs. National Examiner reported a two-headed cat born in Queens. Today for certain. You'll keep my paper for me tomorrow? And then the guy turns around to get a cup of coffee, and Rorschach comes back and he's like, you're not going to forget to keep my paper for me tomorrow, are you? Which, is a fantastic exchange.
I think that's probably one of my favorite parts of the whole book.
But, you immediately shoot over to Dr. Manhattan and Silk Spectre having sex, I guess. And, two hands are rubbing her face, and then a third reaches up, but they're all blue. And this is where you realize that Dr. Manhattan can be in two places at once. So he separated himself into two beings to have sex with his woman, which, as a man, I've got to say, I'd probably do too. At least...
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Wait, you said you wanted a threesome with two dudes. Well, I can be two dudes.
Exactly. You never have to bridge that awkward conversation.
Right.
Like, what, you want another dick here? How about just the same dick twice?
Right. I feel like
three times even. I might have to strain myself a little bit, but we can make this happen.
For you, I'll do it. But she gets freaked out by this, which is a very human, a very human thing, I think. Like, you lay down to have sex with your significant other, then you realize there's another person there, and they've cloned themselves without saying anything about it to you. I can imagine that would take you a little bit by surprise. Now, again, difference between a man and a woman. I was gonna say the difference between a man and a woman. If a chick doubled herself, a guy would just be like, it's not even twins. It's not even twins weird. This is great. But I can understand how it'd be a little bit weird for a woman. I can empathize.
At the same time, though, if a chick did it, you'd be into it, but in the back of your head, you'd be going, "Woman, are you trying to kill me?"
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I can't satisfy you and you.
It's like after you're done, you're laying there, you're like, breathing like that. And then she's like, you want to go again? You're like, I might have a heart attack, but yeah, let's do it.
Well, after she walks away trying to calm herself down, she finds out that not only did he duplicate himself while trying to have sex with her. I like how I can listen to you guys. This is Einbrecht in the chat. I like how I can listen to you guys while I do Disruption and Warframe, but Nick, not a chance. He's too loud. Can't hear a damn beeping the Demolith makes. Not to take anything away from Nick Rackets, but I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you.
I only get loud once I've had too much to drink, and usually that doesn't come.
Funds.
I didn't get too loud then.
I don't know. You shouted pretty loud there for a minute.
I was really excited
yesterday.
I was super excited when Grom funded. But my heart was in
me
the
too.
my heart was in the gutter for the guy. He was gonna have to redo the campaign and break it down into multiple story parts. And
Yeah.
we'll talk about that tomorrow. But I was so happy when I saw that it had gotten funded because, not to take anything away from any other project, but I have yet to back another book on Indiegogo that I felt like deserved to be. Oh yeah, hiccups are the fucking worst, especially in the middle of a show. I don't even know what caused that. I wasn't eating anything. I wasn't drinking that heavily. I was drinking, but not that heavily. Um. Anyway, get back to Watchmen. Uh, After shaking off the fact that her lover had split himself into two, she discovers that he had a third entity of himself outside of the bedroom that was still working. I did yell about fish penises and cigar. Well, okay, fine. I get loud sometimes, but it only means I'm excited.
Yeah.
So she finds out that he's been working this whole time, and in the process, breaks a few things in his lab that he promptly reverses time and fixes. And then you cut over to an interview with what's her name? Fuck, I can't remember her name.
Um, talking about the person interviewing Dr. Manhattan?
No. The woman, his ex girlfriend.
Oh,
Janie Slater.
yeah.
You cut over to an interview with Janie Slater, and they're essentially just talking to her about, hey, you know, you've got cancer now, apparently, and it's Dr. Manhattan's fault, and she's just kind of bitter and butthurt that he left her for Silk Spectre, who was 16 at the time, I believe, which is weird, not gonna lie.
Just a little bit.
And, she's like, fuck it, I'm smoking 3 packs a day now, because, cancer's cancer. But Silk Spectre is in the background of all this. Like, you get the art of Silk Spectre and John interacting, while you get the overlay of the interview with Slater, which is another thing this book does really, really well. I think I can pull that up for you. Let's see here.
Are you talking about like the usage of like silhouettes as transitions and stuff?
No. I'm talking about the usage of art to tell a story that's still happening, like her walking out on John, catching a cab, ending up at Dryberg's house while somebody's trying to fix the lock, and
Oh, yeah.
all the while the Janie Slater interview's taking place.
Oh,
And,
okay. Yeah.
Pisces Peckers. Thanks for that, Matt. I really do appreciate it. Alan Moore got us talking about fish dicks again. I do notice we went from 6 viewers
Always.
to 3 after the mention of fish sticks. So maybe cut down on
damn
that.
Yeah. We're going to make that a banned phrase on the chat.
I will never, ever ban anything
Yeah.
in the chat. Don't listen to Ayrton. If he starts
I
banning
know.
people
I can hope though.
if he starts banning people in the chat, you let me know and I'll fire him immediately. But anyway, this all takes place right before Dr. Manhattan has to do an interview where, he's going to get all dressed up in a tux and change his skin tone for the cameras. All of which happens in the movie again. But
Even the skin tone thing?
I don't think the skin tone thing happens.
No. Because I thought that was funny.
But Actually, it might. I don't
Because
know.
really, they're gonna put makeup on Doctor Manhattan, basically a walking nuclear reaction.
Yeah. Well,
Like, good luck with that.
and once Silk Spectre meets up with Dan Dryberg, she one time at band camp. Well, my chat will never be Bandcamp. I will not let the people censor you unless it's YouTube doing it. So fuck all that. But after she meets up with Dryberg, they decide to go out for dinner. Or no, she decided to walk him to Hollis Mason's to sit down and talk about old superhero shit. And they get encountered by armed thugs and cornered up against the wall. Well, Dan takes his glasses off, and she just kind of looks at him, and well, they commenced whipping the shit out of a bunch of hoodlums, all the while Doctor Manhattan is being, just inquired on his connection to causing cancer in the people that were. Let's see, in the movie does do the skin tone? Yeah, yeah, they do. It's been so long since I've seen it.
Oh,
I don't remember that they did it, but yeah, they do. So I trust Novel Bro here.
All right.
That's probably the biggest thing, the most mistaken thing I've ever said. But this scene again is almost scene for scene from the movie, because while he's doing this interview, you do get cutaways to Dryberg and Silk Spectre beating up a bunch of hoodlums once they reconnect. So you can kind of see the seeds being planted and them becoming mass vigilantes again. And John freaks out after people start questioning him about the cancer, and he's like, leave me alone. And I think this is the difference. Now, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but he says, leave me alone, and in the movie, I think he vanishes. But in the book, he just made everyone in the studio just go away. Well,
Which I would so love that ability.
wouldn't you?
Just make a crowd of people disappear just because they're annoying me. It'd be fantastic.
So,
Too many people in the grocery store. Bang, you gone.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Too many people in the line with the only actual working employee? Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here.
Crying baby in the back of a movie theater. You out.
Who doesn't have the
Back to your
decency to
crib.
just take their baby outside?
Right? Just leave it in the little rocker thing out in the hallway till the movie's over.
No, that's fucked up. But, so, anyway, after the fight, after all that shit happens, Lori decides to go find her a hotel. Dan finishes going to Mason's and then finds out what happened with Dr. Manhattan. The Nova Express comes out, which is a big deal paper, and the second issue of, is it the second issue? No, it's still the first issue. You finally get some more of the Black Freighter story that's going on, and Dr. Manhattan basically says, tell your superiors that I'm leaving. And he's like, leaving? He's like, yeah, I'm going to go to Arizona. Then I think I'm going to Mars. And the kid just starts laughing, and Dr. Manhattan disappears. Yeah, he zaps himself to Mars. In the book, he goes home in his suit after zapping everyone outside of the studio. And then says, well, I'm going to go to Arizona, and I'm going to Mars. Then he goes to Arizona, steals a photograph outside of a frame in a nuclear testing site, and then goes to Mars. So, at least he's a man of his word.
Yeah, which I kind of read his lines in my head as Elon Musk.
Microdosing on acid.
Sounds like a great idea.
So Rorschach, now that Dan's had the lock fixed on his door, Rorschach breaks in again. It tells him he needs a better lock. And, explains that someone manipulated Dr. Manhattan into leaving Earth. And this is kind of based on the connections between the inquiry that the media was giving Dr. Manhattan against Moloch's recounting of his meeting with the comedian. Because the comedian said that Moloch, Janie Slater, Manhattan's friend Wally, and a few other people were on a list. There's no context given at the time for what that list is, but 2 and 2 always kind of makes 5, so you end up with finding out that, this is a list of people that have cancer and are linked to Dr. Manhattan. Even though
everybody got cancer up in here.
Well, that's the thing. After 20 years with the man, Silk Spectre currently doesn't have it.
Yeah.
I never said the Superman exists and he's American. I said God exists and he's American. I've been misquoted multiple times. Which is a direct quote from the book. Good on that one, Novel Bro. No, Wally Weaver was his friend, not the guy that made that quote, I don't think. Could be wrong. Already had leukemia by that point, yeah. So, the kid reading the book, first off, how tall is this news guy?
Yeah, he's like 8'6". What the hell?
That's one of the only downs. Like, the art's fantastic in this book for what it is. I do want to say that.
Yeah.
Like, at no point,
the line work and shadowing and everything is amazing.
But
really, really draws you in.
There's a couple of panels on the right hand side here where the news vendor guy gives his hat and this comic book to this guy that's been reading it all day, and he's just like, life's too short, and the guy just takes the hat and runs off. And the headlines for, what is it, the New York Gazette say that Dr. Manhattan leaves Earth, and immediately the next day afterwards, Russians invade Afghanistan. So, the news guy is obviously kind of shook. And as you are when World War III is basically beginning in your timeline. But then you cut over to Nixon in Washington, and he's looking for kind of a prediction of what Manhattan leaving Earth means. And they're like, well, basically, you can just kiss the entire East Coast goodbye. And he's like, that's not the best.
And if the wind's right, we can save the farmlands and Mexico will get hit.
Yeah. But, he's like, I think I'll wait a week before I launch any nukes. We'll see. We'll see what happens. After that, humanity's in a higher authority than mine. Just hope he's on our side. And Dr. Manhattan sits alone on Mars reviewing a photo. And that's when you get to issue 5. Now, issue 5 definitely took place in the movie, but I don't feel like it was given the credence it deserves.
Definitely my favorite issue.
Really?
Yeah, I loved this.
I was honestly gonna say that it was not my... Is it 5 or 4? It's 4.
Or 4. With Dr. Manhattan jumping between all the timelines.
Right.
And seeing everything happening at once and experiencing it all. I don't know. I thought it was really, really, really well done.
Well, it's literally...
A bit weird and confusing at first, but once you kind of get the hang of what's going on, it's so much fun to read.
It's pure comics. I mean, it's pure comic books in this issue. Like, you've got time travel, you've got, you know, it, not time travel, but you've got time jumps, you've got flashbacks, you've got flash forwards, you've got ideas that only kind of exist in the moment. It basically is the origin of Dr. Manhattan. He starts out, he's a clockmaker's kid. Um, there's his dad throwing away the materials to finish making the, like, reassembling the pocket watch, kind of set him on the path to be a physicist. As a physicist, he ends up in the encounter where he meets Janie Slater. She buys him a beer. They go out to the carnival. Going out to the carnival leads to her watch being broken, leads to them having sex, leads to him offering to fix her watch. He fixes her watch, brings it back to work, and ends up in an accident, which eventually turns him into Dr. Manhattan. And throughout that whole experience, his vascular system starts to reform and show up, haunting the place. Then a partially muscled skeleton shows up before he fully manifests himself as a blue creature from beyond. When he fully manifests himself,
Which,
go ahead.
in theory, he could make himself look however he wants, right?
I mean, technically, yeah, he could rearrange his atoms in any particular.
Why wouldn't you make your dick hang down to your knees?
Those things no longer, like, that's. I honestly think that, like, that's a good question. As funny as it is, as big of a joke as it might be, that's a decent question because at that point, he has no humanity left. There's no ego to him. He's not a prideful character.
That's
You
fair.
know, he's essentially a god, and at a certain point in the story, he says, I don't think God exists."
Well, and then he goes on to say, and even if he did, I'm not him, or
Right.
something to that
Yeah.
effect.
Yeah. So, are you guys seeing the updated screen share? Like, it hasn't updated for me. Like, I don't know what kind of fucking delay we're on here, but my shit's much more delayed. There we go. Yeah, okay. It's where it's supposed to be. So, who the fuck knows? But, it's not a prideful thing. It's not an ego thing. Like, all of those things, like, honestly, and I can't speak for what was inside Alan Moore's acid-washed brain at this point, but it almost feels like he could reform his physical structure, but you can't reform a soul. Does that make sense?
That's fair. I mean, there's still little bits, at least that.
Well, he remembers
that
how
I saw,
to be.
like when he brings
he
brings like Lori to Mars and like shows off his giant flying Martian sandcastle thing. There's a little bit of like trying to impress the girl. Like there's a little tiny spark of humanity left in him.
I don't think so. Like I disagree with you there. I don't think he's trying to show off for her. I think that's just who he is mentally. Like, he's a clockmaker's son. What else would you do given the ability to manifest anything you wanted to from raw materials? To be able to restructure atoms on a metaphysical level, and you're on Mars. Well, I'm gonna make dwelling. I'm gonna have to make an oxygen bubble for the woman that I supposedly quote unquote love. He remembers how to human. He just isn't.
It comes across as practical, but it still seems like maybe somewhere deep down, like it wasn't really in the forefront, but kind of in like a couple of little things. There seems like there was like just a tiny shred of humanity left.
Well, that's
Not
what I
not
mean.
much,
Like,
and it didn't really come out, but it seemed like there was like an underlying
well, that's what I mean. Like,
little bit left.
he remembers how to human. Like, he remembers how to person. He just isn't. If that,
Yeah,
you know. I mean, it's almost like his soul got ripped out, but he remembered how to have one.
man, I need to figure that trick out.
I don't know. I don't know that I'd keep you around. Not that
If I
that's
had a soul.
not that that's the be all end all of your fucking existence, but he goes through his entire history there. He explained like everything kind of juxtaposes over and over again. You rehash certain things that you've already seen. You see things you haven't, and then he keeps going back to the moment of dropping the photograph onto the sand. Because at this point in this issue, and this issue didn't happen in full in the movie. Um, there's no, there's no direct correlation to any of these things except for him showing up on Mars and having like, I don't know, 3 minutes of screen time to talk about his feelings. But he,
Oh, that's it.
yeah, it's not a lot. Um,
Huh.
I mean, it ends kind of the same, but it's not the same kind of feeling.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah, 'cause what I loved about this issue so much is it felt almost like flowing and poetic. How he kept going back to, and the picture falls to my feet in the sand. Like it kind of like it's almost like rhythmic and repetitive the way it goes back to it, and it flowed in a very poetic sense. I thought this was definitely the easiest one to read because it just flew. It just had such a nice flow to it. It just kind of went right along instead of kind of jumping around like some of the other issues do.
so
You know what I mean?
Professor Milton Gass is credited with Dr. Manhattan superpowers and the superpowers, and that's the bonus material at the end of this issue. And yes, I know what you mean. It's a very poetic like theme to this book, and I wouldn't call it my favorite book in the series. Honestly, I like the one that focuses on the doctor that was interviewing Rorschach.
That's fair. That's probably they're probably pretty neck and neck.
Yeah,
Actually, I'd say.
but I mean,
I just like the poetic flow of it
I do too. I just
a
think
little
that
bit more.
I do too. I just think there was more that could happen in this book, except I didn't feel like we needed an entire book. Like, make this story basically like the Black Freighter and tell more of the story with it and cut it down to a 10 issue series. Like, why are 6 and 12
That
your cornerstones?
yeah, that's fair.
Why does it have to be a 6 or a 12 issue series in order to tell the story? Like, fucking do it in 10 if
Yeah,
you can. You could have told more
yeah, that
story
makes
with blue boxes. And that's another thing.
yeah,
This is a
yeah,
good
that makes sense.
example of where text boxes and thought bubbles and everything like that, the style of them are all important. Because in this, every thought bubble of Dr. Manhattan's is blue. We've talked about Infinite Crisis, I believe, or Infinity Crisis or whatever, where there's a murder and everybody has different thought balloons outlined and colored and different.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, also to credit the letterer, you have the different lettering between like Rorschach's journal and the Black Freighter and like Dr. Manhattan's
Right.
dialogue or thought bubbles.
Who
So
was
the
the
lettering in
letterer on
this
this?
is amazing.
Oh, absolutely. And it's much more than just, just a font, so to speak. Because I don't know, that's something that I feel like has kind of spoiled the industry a little bit, is lettering fonts. Like, it could just be me. Where are the goddamn credits? Mm, are there no credits in this fucking book?
Here I just
There we
found
go.
them. It's
They're at the end, yeah.
illustrator letterer Dave Gibbons.
Oh, Gibbons lettered it as well. That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
So, but the book that credits the actual quote, Novel Bro, is supposedly Milton Glass, and what he says is, "I never said the Superman exists and he's American. What I said was God exists and he's American. If that statement starts to chill you after a couple of moments' consideration, don't be alarmed. A feeling of intense and crushing religious terror at the concept indicates only that you are still sane." And if that quote itself doesn't send chills down your spine, then you don't appreciate good writing.
Yeah, I mean, Alan Moore's a crazy acid riddled wizard, but goddamn is he an amazing writer.
So, that pretty much closes down what issue 4 is, but this is an interesting character, like, I don't know, a character study on Dr. Manhattan, because until this point, like, you knew he was cold, methodical, mechanical, but you never really understood what made him tick. And then you open up to issue 5. And issue 5, Malik shows back up. And this is where you get the scene from the movie where he opens up the refrigerator, seeing a corner of Rorschach's coat, opens it up, sees a note that just says, "Behind you," and Rorschach's there. And he's like, "No license." I checked. Very bad. And shoves Malik in the refrigerator, cracks an egg, eats it raw, closes the door on Malik, and then Malik tries to escape the refrigerator. Rorschach grabs his coat and says, "Sorry about the mess. Can't make omelet without breaking eggs."
Which is almost more Chad than just making somebody steak and eggs.
No, you make yourself steak and eggs and then bitch to the guy who didn't have the seasoning or ability to
Yeah,
make
but
good
if you
steak
just
and
like
eggs.
just crack an egg straight into your mouth and then just throw the shell on the ground and say sorry about the mess and walk out. I mean,
So the two detectives that showed up to check out Edward Blake's murder show back up to basically just investigate. Let's see what's going on here. It was a man that killed his children because war was about to break out, and they're so desensitized that they are like, well, let's just go get breakfast. And then we cut back to our newsstand. Our newsie doesn't have his hat, but his buddy showed back up to read the new comic book, gets splashed on, and is wearing the news guy's cap. And this is where you get some of the artwork from the Black Freighter. And this is where you get the story of him building a skiff using the bodies of the dead men because they're inflated with gases. It helped make them float with green pine. Well, Dryberg's taking
I mean,
Laurie
can
out.
you imagine that smell?
Can you imagine trying to drink salt water where dead people have been soaking in it?
That too. It had a weird flavor note to it.
Well, Rorschach, Rorschach's basically the star of this issue, but you get a cutaway to Dryberg and Silk Spectre, and she's been cut off from her military funding. She's got some savings. She's gonna try and find a cheap place to stay. Dryberg offers to let her stay at his place, like you do when you want that crumb. But really, the interesting thing is that a shark attack takes place in the Black Freighter in this book, and Dryberg goes for a meeting with the toy company that does his books and get shot at. His assistant's killed, and he's not. But his assassin apparently commits suicide with a cyanide pill. Again, almost scene for scene from the movie. So, whoever made that movie, like Novelbro, I believe, said it was Scott Snyder. Fan-fucking-tabulous.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hopefully find it tomorrow to be able to watch it.
Well, we'll make sure you get a copy of it. I've got a digital copy I can send you if you want to watch it.
I'm.
I'll let you log into my Voodoo or some shit.
You trust me with that kind of power?
I mean, you can watch that and all of my Disney movies.
Oh, okay.
But this is also the first issue where you see Rorschach actually explaining that his mask is his face. He stops a mugging rape in progress by basically killing a dude. And Dryberg lets Silk Spectre stay at his house. And then you get the end of the Black Freighter issue, as well as something else that doesn't take place in the movie, but I'm not sure the significance of. Maybe you guys can help me with this, but a lesbian cab driver, I believe she is, brings a poster to hang up that says Pink Triangle Live, Gay Women Against Rape, GWAR. I don't understand what the purpose of this is, but
Yeah.
it's kind of a correlation because of Silk Spectre, or not Silk Spectre, Silhouette, who's mentioned earlier in the book, lesbian super adventurer, mask adventurer person, who's killed after she leaves the group because of her sexual proclivities, if you will. So,
Well, it says Guar. I wonder if that's referring to the band.
I hope so. I love the band, but this is also
Maybe they have some song lyric that pertains to what's going on in this part of the book or something.
who the fuck knows. But this is also the scene where Rorschach gets framed, and at this point, you got to know that it's a frame job because a note was left for Rorschach, and he showed up at Jacoby's house right when he was supposed to find the man dead with a bullet between his eyes. even though he has no gun. Rorschach doesn't use weapons, except those available to him at the scene, which you'll later find out. But he sets the stairs that the SWAT team's
Or a
supposed to
grappling hook
climb.
gun.
Right.
Don't forget about that.
That's not a weapon, it's utilitarian, but
Well, I mean, he shoots somebody with it.
he gets he gets captured by the police. They pull his mask off and he's like screaming, "No, no, no, give me back my face, give it back." And we end the issue with a William Blake quote, "Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry?" And we're 4 to 5 minutes to midnight at this point, not quite as far. But this is where you kind of get the tale of the Black Freighter, which is alternate history, I guess. It talks about EC, Entertaining Comics, which we've done a show on. Go check it out. It talks about National Comics, which would eventually be DC Comics. It talks about Three Penny Opera, which, if I'm not mistaken, actually was a thing. But I've never heard of the comic book artist.
Shall I hit the Google?
I mean, if you feel. But it also talks about an artist that I've never heard of called Orlando Jones. And I don't know that he's historically, or Joe Orlando, excuse me, circa 1953. So while you hit the Google on Three Penny Opera, I'm going to look up Joe Orlando.
So it is a thing. The Three Penny Opera is a, quote, play with music by Bertolt Brecht, adapted from a translation by Elizabeth Hauptmann of John Gay's 18th century English ballad opera, The Beggar's Opera, and 4 ballads by Francisco Villon, with music by Kurt Weill.
Okay.
There
So
you go.
in 87, he created an illustration for the supplemental text piece for Watchmen number 5. So he created these images for the Black Freighter, specifically for Watchmen. Tales of the Black Freighter never actually existed, but the artwork available from Tales of the Black Freighter in Watchmen are official Joe Orlando pieces. And that's honestly more interesting than the idea of him being fake.
Well, there's a lot of references to like real
No,
people and historical events, right?
well, yeah, but the thing is, this is a guy that created a fake comic book page for a real
Right.
comic book referencing the fake comic book.
Which only Alan Moore would think to do.
Well, acid does special things to people. Rorschach also whacked people with heavy mag-like torch too. That's correct.
Yeah.
But I mean, just getting through half of this tonight, like, we're gonna have to go through the other half tomorrow, and then we're gonna have to decide very carefully what we review for the last portion of the Alan Moore bit, because we've only got like a week or two left. But we've got one weekend left. But we've also got a couple
Really?
of other.
Jeez.
Well, October flew by pretty fast.
Yeah.
And, Thursday the 31st, we're not going to be able to do a show because it's Thursday, first off. Secondly, I have kids. I have to take trick-or-treating, you fucks. But, we'll see. But let's see here. Where the fuck was I? Oh, yeah. So, set this up.
Yeah, I mean, oh, really, I like this a lot more than Neonomicon. I'll say that.
Well, that's why you should always listen to me when I tell you that maybe,
Yeah,
maybe we
well,
should, read certain things and not other certain things.
what can I say? I'm stubborn.
I also have 2 shots of bourbon left, so I'm going to do one with you. Then I'll do one after the show with you. While you go to sleep to get better.
All right.
So, but anyway, this kind of this auxiliary material gives you a little bit of insight into the idea that pirate comics picked up over superhero comics, which, as anyone who hosts the show knows, not co-host but host. Fuck you, Ayrton. Sorry, had to clear my throat.
Oh, you sound like me right now. Got a little cough there.
A little bit, just enough
Yeah.
to tell you to fuck yourself. But
Oh, okay.
superhero comic came to prominence in 1937, 1938. So 1939 would have been the cusp of people realizing that superhero comics were popular. After Action Number 1, Detective Introducing Batman, it would have led to the flood of the idea that superheroes were a big deal. In this alternate history in 1939, it was revealed that superheroes were a bust and pirates were the big thing. Now, the interesting thing is that the Black Freighter is supposedly a vessel shipped directly from hell and is crewed by people either destined for Hell's Gate, excuse me, either destined for Hell's Gates or already damned. So, kind of an interesting premise in that regard, because what are you going to do, right?
I mean, I kind of want more pirate comic books.
As you should.
Yeah. I mean, come on.
But,
And not like space pirates, like Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, I want beards and them saying R, and on ships with rum and wenches and shit. And swords.
Rorschach whacks people with heavy maglite torch too, making me cough now, says Novelbro. So, that's honestly one thing that I can give to this comic book series over anything else is the auxiliary material created for it is so fantastic. Like, there's literally very little that will even begin to compare to the preparation made for this. Like, you thought the shit from House of X and Powers of X, like the graphs and the charts and the...
Yeah.
Like, you thought that was good stuff. Like, imagine sitting down with a typewriter and writing out all of this. Ayrton wants ass. What?
Ass.
Oh, ass
What about
pirates.
Oh.
That's your friend Daniel.
Ah.
You thank him for that, personally, with a punch to the face later.
Okay.
Anyway, let's look at issue 6, which is the halfway point, and we will finish this series up tomorrow night. But come on, load, you piece of shit. There we go. Oh. What? Who? What?
I heard 2 delings from your end.
As did everybody else. Well, this is my favorite issue from the series. This is the issue where you basically kind of get a backstory on not only Walter Kovacs, aka Rorschach, but his therapist, in a maximum security prison. And again, I can't help but, give credence to the idea that whoever created this movie based on this comic book did a fan-fucking-tastic job. Because even though they spent an entire issue on this, which, if sitting down to read it and taking in the art and the wording and reading it with any kind of proficiency, would probably take you about 20 minutes to half an hour.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Um, they covered the first part of this and several integral parts of this in the movie, almost scene for scene. However, they did not go as far in depth as I would have liked. But
Yeah, I was curious how this part would play out in a movie setting.
Well,
because it gets pretty dark and twisted.
you do get the story of how Rorschach became Rorschach in the movie.
Okay.
But you don't get as much of the backstory of the therapist, which apparently in Doomsday Clock, his son becomes Rorschach based on this interview and this exchange that goes on over several days. So, Rorschach is given a Rorschach test, which is ironic as fuck, right?
Yeah, which made me laugh. Not gonna lie.
But he's like, what do you see? And he's like, a pretty butterfly. But you get an image of a dog with his head split in half. And then a second Rorschach test is given, and he's like, oh, what do you see? And he's like, you know, he imagines his mother coupling with someone, and he's like, some nice flowers. But all through this, you see Rorschach going back to his cell, everyone making threats. Well, eventually he basically maims a guy with hot grease. I think it's pretty fantastic.
Oh yeah.
And that's essentially pulling his dick out in the yard, but nobody wants to fuck with that guy afterwards. But you also have the, just I don't, I don't know. You have the story of the therapist, which I almost feel like is more important than the story of Rorschach.
Okay. I'm
Because
following you.
well, it starts out, and the therapist is like, this, this therapy session, this case could give me my bones. It could make me famous. And he's like working on it after dark. His wife pops in, and she's like, "Oh well, we're happy. We have a nice life. Nothing else matters." And the next day, the guy goes in, and he's almost yawning, and he's like, "I had a late night with the wife." And Walter Kovacs is like, "You keep calling me Walter. I don't like you." He's like, "You don't like me, all right? Why is that exactly? You're fat, you're wealthy, you think you understand pain. I'll tell you something, doctor. I'll tell you about Rorschach." He tells him about the dress where the cloth for his mask eventually came from. And the girl who was supposed to buy it was murdered while people watched on, and that's what supposedly started Walter dressing up as a masked vigilante. And he's like, "But I wasn't Rorschach then. I wasn't Rorschach yet." He's like, "You don't want to make me well. You just want to know what makes me sick. You'll find out. Have patience, doctor. You'll find out." So that's when he hits the guy with hot grease. The guy drinks, like the therapist drinks some coffee the next night while trying to go over the case file, and his wife's like, "Oh, you're drinking coffee. You're not going to sleep at any point in that." And he's like, "Well, I have a late night. I've got to work." And she's like, "Why is it any time I bring up sex, you bring up work? Blah, blah, blah." And he's just like distraught. So basically, she's calling him a cuck.
Or gay.
Yeah. Impotent, essentially.
Or that.
And he's just, trying to get through this and trying to understand what makes Walter Kovacs tick so that he can get into a medical journal, become famous or whatever. And he's like, "I wasn't Rorschach when I first started. I was too soft on criminals. Kovacs was pretending to be Rorschach." And he eventually gets to the idea that, he discovered what evil really was. Because the guy shows up and he's like, "Look at this Rorschach test again and tell me what you really see." And he's like, "I see a dog with his head split in half." And he's like, "What do you think split the dog's head in half?" And Rorschach was like, "I did." And he goes into this deep story about how he was on the trail of a missing 6-year-old. And, it led 2 German shepherds who guarded the place and were fighting over literal bones of the deceased. Well, Rorschach hung out, killed both the dogs with a meat cleaver, apparently, threw the dead carcasses at the owner of the dogs, handcuffed the owner to a radiator, and set the house on fire.
And handed him a hacksaw.
Handed him a hacksaw, smothered him in gasoline, and set fire to the building, and waited outside. No one walked out. But he explained that you probably shouldn't waste your time trying to saw through the handcuffs. So, one day I'll tell you guys about my grandfather and coming home from the war and deciding that, a nail in a Coke bottle cap. I'll tell you that story one day.
Uh-oh.
Houses didn't used to cost as much as they do. That's all I'm going to say.
That's a very good point.
But anyway, the therapist and his wife hosted a dinner party in which the therapist depicted the story that, Rorschach had told him. And not only caused his guest to leave early, but caused his wife to leave him. And this therapist's son becomes the second Rorschach in Doomsday Clock. Which is kind of a callback to Night Owl, who has a second in Watchmen. But this one ends on a Nietzsche quote. So, "Battle not with monsters lest ye become a monster. And if you gaze into the abyss gazes also into you." So,
And
that's
it's Nietzsche.
fuck you. English is my second language.
I know. I'm just trying to help you.
If I wanted your help, I'd give it to me. But the auxiliary material for this story is actually Kovacs' arrest record, which I think is pretty goddamn fantastic.
I did read through that a little bit more than the other auxiliary stuff. I did find that interesting.
Well, honestly, if you're going to watch the movie for the first time ever, I would say watch it and kind of thumb through the book and figure out, what correlates chronologically and what doesn't.
I mean, it would be pretty easy with a digital copy. Sit there and do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I use our Patreon money to pay for Comixology. Also,
True.
speaking of, we're at damn near $35 a month on Patreon to do this, which is our hobby, and we do love it. So, thanks everybody for that. Tomorrow,
Yeah, you guys are amazing.
keep an eye on your email and your Patreon account. We're going to send out a special private link for a Patreon only stream where we'll be doing
Ooh.
some videos where Ayrton and I will go through some comic books, and we'll be talking about stuff like, I don't know, Arm Fall Off Boy. We'll be talking about Danny the Street, and we'll be talking with Gilbert Deltrez around 7 p.m. about having Galactic Rodents of Mayhem fully funded and on the way. So it'll be fantastic.
Which I'm so excited for. I cannot wait for this book. So excited.
But anyway, tomorrow night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will finish up Watchmen, issues 7 through 12. Those of you that have seen the movie know that it ends in blood and chaos, although not from nuclear holocaust, but from a giant fucking squid. Because apparently Alan Moore has a fish monster fetish.
Yeah, because Alan Moore fucking would.
No, I mean, when you do that much acid, what are you going to do, right?
Is there a squid monster in V for Vendetta? Please tell me there's not.
I don't think there's a squid monster in V for Vendetta. Oh shit, Blackout's here. How you doing, buddy? You, wondering when Gom would be brought up in conversation. Grom is always pertinent to the conversation, Novel Bro.
Always.
But we'll be talking with Gilbert for a video next week. Blackout, thanks for stopping by. I don't know, we got what? I don't know, it's midnight now. We could probably end the stream and be good with it, but I feel like we're at a, oh wait, let me skip forward here. We're at we got about 2.5 minutes left to go. I can ban for that long. But anyway, we'll be finishing up Watchmen tomorrow night. We have 6 more issues to go through. We have some videos to clip up for the following week. Still jet lagged as shit, but I'm good. Happy to see you all streaming. Well, that's what we do. Get yourself a green shake.
Thank you.
Get some protein in there. Crack an egg. Put on your Rorschach mask. Drink it. Put on a chef's hat. Drink wine straight from the goblet. All that good shit. We don't talk about my teenage years. Where I wore a bandana over my face and wore a chef's hat, sunglasses. That was my rap persona.
See, I had a feeling Alan Moore wrote Rorschach around your teenage years.
He didn't have a chef's hat on or a bandana. Don't bullshit me.
Well, but, when Alan Moore looks at that image in his acid wizard mind, it kind of turns into that weird mask and just a fedora or trilby.
This is not true.
That's technically a trilby.
It is a trilby. I'm glad you know what a trilby is, because otherwise I'd have to fire you. Indiana Jones wore a fedora. Al Capone wore a fedora.
The Blues Brothers wear a trilby.
That is correct. Also, so do most neckbeards.
Yeah, that too.
all those looking for that one single crumb of pussy. They wear trophies. And think it's hot.
See, I'd rather any pussy I get not be, have any resemblance to a crumb.
Well, you know. My teenage years. MDMA. Baby. Oh, well, you know. Molly in the sky with diamonds. Anyway.
I do like my women like I like my coffee.
Ground up into the
with
freezer?
no pubic hair. No, with no pubic hair.
Oh, well, I was close.
You were close.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we will see you all tomorrow night.
Not all ages.
Oh no, children of all ages, as long as you have parental consent.
Okay, fair
enough. We will see you guys here again tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're a patron of any level whatsoever, you will have access to our private stream, which will probably start around what? What do you want to say? 6 p.m.?
6-ish.
Yeah, 6-ish.
If Gilbert's coming on 7 or at 7.
He's coming on at 7. I'll send you some links around noon so you can sleep in and wake up to the links.
That should work.
Okay. I seem to recall my teenage years involved around a PlayStation 1 games and X-Men comics. Well, I mean, that's everyone's teenage years. But yeah, private stream around, Patreon only stream around 6:30 p.m.
Yes, somewhere around there.
We'll do a couple 10, 20-minute segments. Maybe even do a 30-minute segment with Gilbert if he has the time. And do his victory lap for Galactic Rodents Mayhem. Then next week, we'll actually have videos to put out for the patrons. Uh-oh.
That's right.
Wait a minute.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, thank you everybody for stopping by, for indulging us, for hanging out, liking, sharing, subscribing, all that nonsense. We appreciate everything.
And good night, everybody.
That's what I was waiting on. Thanks, everybody.
I'm gonna go crawl in a hole and die now.
There you go. Not allowed, but you can die for the evening. You just better be back by 5 or 6 tomorrow.
All right, fair enough.
All right, later, buddy. Have a good one.
Good night.